I'm Debra Hensley. You're listening to our ongoing series, Good Lives, Good Lives, a part of Debra's Social Stimulus.
My mother was a gardener, and I think I had my first taste of gardening under her tutelage. And her passion was wildflowers. But I love to watch things grow. I like to plant seeds and watch them grow and start small. We were both Depression kids. We met over a ping pong table late one night in a great big old mansion on Prospect Street in New Haven. Bob was in a class, and they came in to play ping pong.
The instructor on this class was in the process of getting a divorce, and he didn't want to go home. So when our class ended,
you got put out of the building. and that's where and how we met.
Yeah, that's technically how we met. But our first date, actually, we had an awful Chinese meal in downtown New Haven and walked out, and there was a trolley car headed toward Savin Rock, which was a then almost deserted amusement park, but we decided to get on the trolley and ride down to Savin Rock, and that's where we began to get to know each other. We didn't get off, we just stayed on the car to the end of the line, and the next night we had another date, and we had another date the next night, and we saw each other each night for the next 10 days. Anyway, it came a Friday night, and I proposed. And she didn't say no, she just said she'd think about it over the weekend. So Monday, she said yes.
I did think about it over the weekend.
And I had a nice visit with her father, who at the time didn't know that we were, saw ourselves engaged. And I remember when I was leaving, he said, "Well, young man, nice to meet you. Maybe I'll see you again sometime." And that was almost 67 years ago.
Well, it was 1945.
Yeah, it was 1945. That's 67 years ago.
Yeah. I guess we're involved in the things that we care about. And we feel from a very selfish point of view that the health of the community affects our comfort living in it. That a healthy community is a much nicer place to live.
I think it's part of our religion.
Yes, I think you could say that. We both grew up in homes where our parents were committed to the community as well. It's just kind of built into our values. Those are things that I'm interested in, that I like knowing about.
We had good role models in our parents.
I grew up in a Republican household, but my parents were thinking Republicans. They didn't vote for a person just because they were Republican. I had a dad who was a physician who believed that it was his responsibility to take care of his patients. And he had to give up private practice because he could not bring himself to bill people whom he felt could not afford to pay. But he had a very different attitude toward medicine from the current attitude. He had just assumed from the beginning that it would not be an income-producing occupation, but one that would be very satisfying. It affected my value system and my feelings about things that were important. My mother had nursed in a hospital in England that had been developed by some of the women working for women's suffrage in England, and she saw them go to prison for their work in women's suffrage. So when she reactivated her citizenship in this country, being able to vote was extremely important to her. And so she joined the League of Women Voters in about 1927. And I grew up hearing her talk about the things they were doing, and I used to go with her when she would go downtown to a local department store to work as a volunteer demonstrating to people how to use the voting machines. And there was always talk at our dinner table about political things. I don't really know how to define feminism. I feel very, very strongly about women having equal opportunity. I had the privilege of staying at home. We had a small budget and we thought we were rich. And we raised 4 kids, and I was a stay-at-home mom, and as I look back on that, I consider that to have been a privilege. The other thing that I've done, well, I did a lot of work for the League in retirement, the League of Women Voters. I organized and developed a statewide study on juvenile delinquency, and then I became treasurer of the State League. I never had any aspiration to run the show. I much preferred the service end and doing the digging and the putting material together. One of the joys in my life has been watching what Bob has done in his professional life. And he started out shortly after getting his doctorate by working in a field that was not really approved of by the establishment.
One of the moonlighting jobs I had was with the Governor's Commission on Health Resources, the chairman of which was William R. Willard. He created the first position in a medical school for a social scientist and offered the job to me. He talked about being invited to come here to start a new medical school. And he said one of his concerns was the people he'd brought to Lexington. And with a sort of sadness, I assured him that he had no responsibility to me because I had come under him and I would wish him well on his new job. He said, well, I'm glad you feel that way. If I go, I want you to come with me.
But your friends in sociology worried that you weren't focusing on pure sociology.
Oh, yes. When we were coming to Lexington, one of the professors at Yale, who had been a very good friend, wrote me a sort of father's letter in which he said, reconsider your move to Kentucky. If you go to Kentucky, you will be professionally forgotten. And I love to think of that because there are times when I wish I had been. As I get on airplanes to go here and there and yon. I chuckle so many times over that because I have never been professionally forgotten. This job in Lexington just gave me an opportunity. In terms of my career, it just took off. 10 years later, the national boards began testing in behavioral science. It was just the beginning of a takeoff in medical education.
They felt that he was going down the wrong track, and he has felt free to be innovative and to involve himself in new ideas and new developments, like being in on the ground floor of the development of medical sociology as a subspecialty of sociology, which became the biggest branch of the American Sociological Society some years later, and starting a Department of Behavioral Science here at Kentucky, which was the first in a medical school in the country. And that's been delightful to watch. My wishes are for better school systems and higher value placed on children. I think our children are our key to the future.
I would add to that greater respect for and concern for the environment. I would like to see more politicians who really care about the people and the land of Kentucky. A world with less hatred, more respect for diversity of peoples, and greater capacity of leadership and respect for leaders who really care about the land and the people of our world.
I would like to see a world that puts a higher value on compassion than profit. I feel that the profit-driven economy that we live in today is evil. And I don't mean that I'm advocating for communism, I'm not. But I would like to rein in the excessive profits and accumulation of private wealth and see more people at the bottom with better income and more people at the top paying the way. I'm not sure that we can give grandchildren advice that they will listen to, but what we can do is try to set some kind of role modeling. And we have for some years asked our children to no longer give us gifts, but to make donations to nonprofit community interests in their own community that they are concerned with. And just hope that that rubs off.
As Ruth has said, I hope that they will have a degree of passion and concern for those who are less fortunate in their lives, and will think of others, give much more value to their concern for others than their concern for their own well-being.
We've had fun, haven't we? But
Yeah, we've had fun.
this woman's absolute, total love and support. And
I guess one of the things that I've had to work at is keeping you from taking yourself too seriously.
Bless you.
It's called growing up.